Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I am back after a few weeks off for a one-time encore presentation of the show, coming to you guys from my place in Fayette, Iowa, where I've spent the past couple of weeks starting up my new job as a graduate assistant at Upper Iowa University in the sports communication department. My first broadcast is coming up soon. It's actually next week. It'll be Upper Iowa University football taking on the University of Minnesota Duluth. Men's and women's soccer is soon to follow, as is volleyball. So I thought before the madness ensues, before my schedule gets too filled up, I thought I'd come back to this show and put together one more episode to talk a little bit about some of the storylines that I've missed over the couple of weeks, some that I didn't get to wrap up on my last show, and also talk about the soccer here and now, and talk a little bit about stuff that's been going on back home in St. Louis. Of course, we've had some major developments with St. Louis City SC. Want to talk a little bit about that. And I'm very excited for my guest this week. This was actually supposed to happen on my final episode, but we got back in touch. We were able to work something out. I'm excited to bring that to you all this week. So again, home studio looks a little bit different here in Fayette, Iowa, but you can see, especially above my head, all the scarves that I've got going around. St. Louis City SC, I've got Bradley Soccer, and also I've got St. Louis FC up there as well. Chelsea poster back there. We got Chelsea FC flag a little bit off camera over here. Again, still feels like home. Got a bunch of soccer around me. And yeah, things have been going great so far. But like I said, soccer doesn't stop. We were coming off of one of the best summers of soccer in a long time, rolling right into the domestic seasons across Europe. Of course, those seasons over in America, they're still going strong as we approach that final push to the playoffs. So plenty to get to in this week's episode. But of course, I've got to start off with what I think was just the biggest story potentially of 2021 in soccer. It's got to be at least top 5, but especially recently, we got to talk a little bit about a little transfer of one of the best, if not the best, players in the world. And I'll start off by saying this, right? When it comes to the greatest athletes, of my generation, of your generation, of anybody's generation, right? They're mostly remembered for what they do on the field, right? However, there's a special level of regard reserved for those athletes that become synonymous with their teams. You can't think of the Chicago Bulls without thinking of Michael Jordan. You can't think of the Green Bay Packers without thinking of Brett Favre. Of course, if you want a local connection there in St. Louis, can't think about the St. Louis Cardinals without thinking about Albert Pujols, especially recently here over the past few years. Again, what they were able to do and for how long they were able to do it with their teams is why they become so connected to those cities and to those teams. That's why it is so shocking that it transcends not just sports news, but national news and even international news when these players switch teams. They've spent so long and been doing great things with these clubs, and all of a sudden, either due to personal grudges or other personal reasons or to money, they switch teams at the end of their careers. Michael Jordan with the Wizards just doesn't make any sense. Brett Favre with the Jets, for example, doesn't make any sense. And of course, we know what Albert has been doing there in Los Angeles with the Angels, now, of course, with the Dodgers. We have recently had that example, right? I mean, just think back to just a couple of seasons ago when Cristiano Ronaldo seemed like he was doing fine at Real Madrid and all of a sudden found his way in Italy and over to Juventus in just a stunning turn of events. I didn't think that I would see him move in my lifetime. I definitely didn't think that I would see this next guy move in my lifetime, but it happened this summer. Barcelona legend Lionel Messi, one of the best players. Again, I said this earlier, but he's clearly, arguably, unless you're a Ronaldo fan, the best player in the world right now, quite possibly one of the best players ever. Spent 20-plus years, 21 years, I believe, at FC Barcelona. There had been talks, I talked a little bit about it a few times on previous episodes, about him potentially being upset with Barcelona and potentially moving on. Well, over the course of the summer, with Barcelona, bringing back in one of their old presidents to run the club and some of the other things, it sounded like Messi had opened up to the idea of sticking around with Barcelona. And it turns out they even had a contract agreed to. But over, a few weeks ago, talks began to break down. The club cited, financial reasons on their part, financial rules set by La Liga, and things just kind of broke down. All of a sudden, Lionel Messi has made a transfer to PSG. 21 years with FC Barcelona, and all of a sudden, Messi has moved on to a different club. Now, of course, there have been some suggestions, in newspapers and other, outlets there in Spain and around the world that there are more nefarious reasons as to why Messi hadn't been brought back. You could kind of see it in that press conference, right? He chose his words very carefully, saying he did all that he could do to see if he could stay at Barcelona, kind of implying that the club have kind of backed away from their stance, and they've cited these reasons as basically excuses when it's really on them not doing all that they could to bring Messi back. Regardless, it's a transfer that just shakes the football world. He hasn't even played a match yet, I believe. They've been kind of delaying his debut. But again, it just sets these two clubs off in different motions, right? We talked about PSG, the summer that they had, bringing in, Donnarumma, Sergio Ramos, Hakimi, Wijnaldum from Liverpool, all of these just, star-studded players. And all of a sudden, now they can crown that, list of transfers with Lionel Messi. Now, I know over the past couple of days, there have been rumors that Kylian Mbappe is trying to force a move to Real Madrid. By the way, on a separate note, I don't know why he would want to do that. I know, of course, the pedigree, that's been a dream of his, but in terms of, aspirations, in terms of Champions League football, Madrid's gone downhill the past few years, man. I don't know if you want to leave this gold mine of situation in your home country, potentially winning the Champions League for Real Madrid, but I digress. Even if Mbappe leaves, I still think PSG are the clear favorites to win the Champions League. Think about it. Lionel Messi has had the benefit of playing with so many great teammates over the years, but one could argue, and I'm not sure if the stats back this up or not, but it's got to be close, that his best productivity was when he was with Neymar. Those two are best buds. I know the Argentina-Brazil dynamic makes it a little confusing, but those two are great friends. They play well together, and now they have reunited potentially with Kylian Mbappe. I mean, if Mbappe stays, they could set all types of goal-scoring records in the Champions League and in League One. It could be unimaginable what they're able to do on the offensive end. But even if Mbappe leaves, those two, with what PSG already have, they're going to be extremely tough to beat. So again, I'm really excited to see how he fits with the rest of that team, with what Pochettino wants to do. League One, again, I know he's going to tear it up. Who knows? Maybe he could score 40-plus goals once again. But especially in the Champions League, that's what it's come down to for PSG over the past couple of seasons. This is the type of move that they needed to do to put them over the hump. They've got all that talent already. They've spent, a gazillion and gazillion euros on all of these players. But now they've got a guy, when the original ownership group came in, that they wanted to bring in. So again, Messi with PSG, again, makes an already great situation almost just improbably perfect for them. On the flip side, for Barcelona, I mean, we've seen this coming, right? It's not just been Messi, debating with the club, him being angry with the club. We've seen this over the past couple of years in terms of management in the boardroom. From a management perspective, the managers they've brought in, they've been firing managers a lot more than they had in their recent year history. And of course, on the pitch, the results just haven't been there, especially in the Champions League. They've been knocked out way too early here over the past couple of attempts. So we've seen this gradual downfall continuing. We now know about their really bad financial situation as well. This was kind of just the nail in the coffin of that downfall. They've been relying too much on aging players that they've been paying way too much money to. In terms of transfers, they haven't been able to get the big names that they had been able to in the past. You think about just now recently who they were able to bring in. Memphis Depay, he's a very nice player, but in terms of like the world stage, is he even top 10, top 15, at his position? It's possible that he isn't. So again, they're just not bringing in the guys that they used to. So again, we've seen this downfall from Barcelona. But yeah, Messi leaving, 21 years of service, coming up through as a young pup through their academy, basically, playing with the likes of Ronaldinho, Ibrahimovic, Thierry Henry, Xavi, Iniesta. I mean, he's played with so many great players. He's won so many trophies, set so many records, had so many moments, and yet here we are. He has moved on to a different club. It's shocking. It serves as a warning to other clubs that you got to find a way. You have to plan ahead, right? Barcelona failed to do this. They thought they could get away with this. They thought Messi would be with them forever. They mismanaged left and right, and now they are in this situation. It's a warning to clubs. Think ahead. Be careful with your finances. Be careful with the players that you bring in. Always try to keep your star players happy. Yes, sometimes players, they shouldn't be bigger than the club. But in this case, when you're one of the best in the world, one of the best of your generation, one of the best players ever, you have to find sacrifices and a way to keep him at the club. So this serves as a warning. Again, never thought I'd see this happen, but here we are, Lionel Messi playing for a club other than Barcelona. Okay, so now we move from the biggest player story in the world to what I still believe is the biggest league in the world, and that would be the English Premier League. We are through 2 weeks into the newest season. Again, we've already had a couple of major statements made by some of the top clubs. We're beginning to see how some of those mid-table clubs and possibly, clubs at the bottom could shape out here in the season. So I want to go through, my 5, starting points, my 5 observations that I've had here through the first couple weeks of the season. Starting out with the big one, of course. I think that we're going to have a 4-team race here for the title. I'm talking about Manchester City, Chelsea, Manchester United, and Liverpool. Start with Man City, right? A 5-0 victory over Norwich, that's expected, right? Again, not too impressed with that. I'm concerned with the 1-0 loss on that opening match day versus Tottenham. They desperately needed a striker. We now know with reports saying that Harry Kane has elected to stay at Tottenham. He's been the main target for Man City this summer. So they're kind of have to scramble a little bit. I mean, Gabriel Jesus looked good against Norwich, but it was obvious that Pep doesn't think too much of him because he didn't start that match versus Tottenham. They went with the false 9, and they paid the price for it. So if City don't shore things up there and maybe tweak a few other things there in that lineup, maybe we don't see the quite level of success that we've seen with them in the EPL over the past few seasons. But still, with Pep, with the pedigree, with all the players that they've got, they're going to be in the race no matter what. Chelsea, they look pretty good in preseason, and they looked pretty good in that first match versus Crystal Palace. But, of course, they got a major facelift bringing back, I should say, Romelu Lukaku to the club. Huge transfer. I believe it was £97.5 million, which is ironic because they sold him for, I believe, 26 or 28 million pounds back in the day. So a huge admittance of a mistake there on their part. But again, they needed a striker, more specifically a 20-goal striker. And Lukaku, you could just see it. Arsenal had no answer for him in that match. The style of play that he has, he takes up so much space. He's a load to deal with, and he pulls other defenders away from other attacking players. That's why Reece James was able to have a goal and assist there versus Arsenal. Changes the way that Chelsea are going to play. Again, reigning Champions League winners, I don't expect them to have that level of success this year. I believe they're going to be more focused on the title, and bringing in someone like Lukaku is a statement that they plan to be in the thick of it. So again, Chelsea with Lukaku in tow, and they're still getting some guys back. Obviously, tough blow seeing Pulisic go down with COVID-19, but still, of course, Chelsea, from their standpoint, they got plenty of guys to fill that spot. So they're definitely going to be in the thick of it for the title race. Moving on to Manchester United, who I'm going to maintain as my pick to win the Premier League. I know they dropped points versus Southampton here, that 1-1 draw. Again, I just got to think that Jadon Sancho, they're bringing him in, at a slow pace. They're trying to ease him back after his duty there in the summer at the Euros. He's not sitting in favor of Anthony Martial. No sane manager would make that decision, consistently. Sancho is eventually going to be starting in that lineup. Remember, Rashford is still out injured. And then, of course, you've got Rafael Varane, who hasn't even started a match yet for United. So the defense is going to look different. The attack's going to look different. Eventually, United are going to find that groove like they found in that 5-1 opener versus Leeds. So again, don't count them out because they just dropped points. United, they still got some guys that they need to get into the lineup. And then lastly, Liverpool. I know, again, it's the same exact team, right? They haven't really made much changes over the past few seasons. But again, you have to bank on Klopp, Salah, Mane, and the rest of that club. They get back Virgil van Dijk, which is going to be huge for that defense and make it much more improved. But still, little uneasiness there in terms of the depth of that squad. If some people go down with an injury, you just never know what that's going to do. But still, with Liverpool, they've done it before with this group. They can do it again. And again, they're going to have a huge test this weekend, Chelsea versus Liverpool. That's going to show us a little bit about where these two clubs are at. Remember, to finish off the season, Chelsea shut out Liverpool, I believe, at Anfield by a 1-0 scoreline. We'll see how things look this time around. But still, I definitely believe we're going to have a 4-team race that could shorten up maybe to a couple of different clubs by the end. But at least here for these opening stages, should be a wide open title race. My next observation is I've been really impressed with two other clubs from London, and that would be Tottenham and West Ham. Both those clubs have won their first 2 matches to start the season. Tottenham, arguably the biggest win with that 1-0 result versus Manchester City, while West Ham, they've scored 4 goals in each of their first 2 matches. Very impressed with Tottenham. Again, of course, they've got Nuno Espirito Santo there coaching now. His tactics and what he's been able to bring have worked really well for Tottenham so far. Now, of course, they get the boost that Harry Kane is going to be coming back to the club. So we'll have to see what that does, how that changes things a little bit, but still, good start by Tottenham. And then West Ham, especially if you're playing Fantasy Premier League, you've been reaping the benefits of a few of those guys like Mikel Antonio and Benny Rahama and some of the other guys that they've got there, Fornals, some of the defenders that they have. It's been a fun team to watch. Again, they had a great season last year. Now it looks like they're looking to build upon that. They could be taking that Leicester City role, basically a little bit smaller club. They've got a lot of really good big-time players who are looking to make a mess of that top 6 with the big clubs. So we'll see if they can sustain it this year. They're going to have a little bit more, added duties with Europe. But still, really cool to see West Ham getting back to some of those glory days, of when they were really good and where they were near the top of the table. So again, I've been impressed with the starts by those two clubs. They could be ones to crash the party of those other clubs there at the top of the table. Up next, I'm going to talk about another London club, and that would be one Arsenal. And again, I never 100% root against Arsenal. My brother's an Arsenal fan. I know a lot of people who are Arsenal fans. And again, they've had some great players over the years. I don't hate them as much as I do some of the other clubs. But of course, there is the Stan Kroenke factor. I can't help but chuckle a little bit at the start of what they've been able to do so far this season. They've been shut out twice here in their first two matches. They traveled to Manchester City this weekend. Good luck with that. But I do want to address, just the amount of anger targeted at manager Mikel Arteta. Guys, Arsenal's problems run much deeper than Mikel Arteta. They just don't have the talent. And that comes down to ownership, again, Stan Kroenke, and the board not bringing in the right players. The best they can do so far has been, one defensive midfielder and then bringing back guys that they already had, like a Martin Odegaard or something like that. The talent, I know Ben White was a huge signature for them. He's out right now with COVID, so I don't want to get too much into that. But just some of the guys that they've had there, playing Callum Chambers at right back when he's not a right back. In terms of just the setup, they can't really do much in terms of, player personnel. I'm sure they wanted to change tactics versus Chelsea. They knew what they needed to address. They just didn't have the guys to do it. Offensively, Aubameyang still coming back from illness, Lacazette trying to get over COVID-19. They don't have all their guys yet, so we'll have to see here in the coming weeks when they're at full health how things look. But from a talent perspective, especially back there at defense, they just don't have the horses to compete with the likes of a Chelsea, like a Manchester City, like a Manchester United. Again, they just don't have it. So until behind-the-scenes stuff is addressed, that they commit to bringing in players and they do a better job of recruitment, this is the expectation here for Arsenal. So again, not a great start to the season. As they become more healthy, hopefully they can kind of get back up to speed and start picking up some results. But again, sacking Mikel Arteta is not going to fix this. It goes much deeper than that. So we'll have to see if they can get it done, especially if Arteta can find a way to get it done with the squad. But yeah, not a great start there for the Gunners. All right, let's move a little bit farther down in the table and talk about some clubs who have struggled here in the first couple of weeks that could potentially be relegation candidates. I'm talking about Wolves, I'm talking about Burnley, I'm talking about Newcastle. All three of those clubs have lost their first two matches here to start the season. And think about it, reinforcements probably not coming, in the next few weeks or so for these clubs. You think about Wolves, they've lost their manager. They've lost one of the best attacking players a few years ago in Diogo Jota. And then, of course, they lost the starting goalkeeper, Rui Patricio. It's a tough start for them. They haven't been able to score many goals. I don't know if they've been able to score any, actually. So, again, potentially with these, absences and departures, they could be ones to fall a few places there in the table. Newcastle, this has been a few things over the past few years, right? They just haven't brought in a ton of players. They brought back Joe Willock, who was successful for them there at the end of the season. But as far as other personnel, it just hasn't been coming, Defense is still a problem there as well. And then with Burnley, right? Over the past few seasons, they've played their heart out. Sean Dyche is a fantastic manager, but they just don't have the funds and the resources to keep up with the rest of the clubs in this league. It seems like it could be catching up to them. They have a few nice, offensive pieces. On defensive side of things, they've kind of been picked apart here over the past couple of years with players leaving. So I definitely could see them potentially being another relegation candidate as well. Hopefully, the pedigree of these clubs, the fact that they've been up in the Premier League here for the past couple of seasons, they find a way to figure things out, but they could be some of those clubs who could be looking at relegation here at the end of the season. And my last observation of the EPL, I want to talk about the three new clubs who have been promoted here for this season. Don't know much yet about Watford. They had that nice opening week win, but then they kind of fell back to earth a little bit. Haven't really seen enough of them to kind of make an assumption on how they're going to do. However, I've seen enough of Brentford to think that they're going to stay up this year. They've shut out their opponents in their first two matches. They remain unbeaten. In terms of the talent that they have, they got some really good attacking players, and seems like they've been able to figure things out on the defensive end. They've come into the EPL and played a smart, tactical game, and so far it looks like they're going to be the ones that survive. On the other side, I will caveat with this in terms of Norwich. Terrible start to their schedule, right? I don't know who made their schedule, who thought they were funny, but, set them up to fail, facing Liverpool and Manchester City back-to-back to start the season. That's just terrible. Terrible for a new club who got promoted to come into this league and have to deal with. But, again, last time they were up, they failed to play very good defense, and that's what sent them right back down. Their goal scoring didn't translate. We've talked about Timu Puki and what he's been able to do in the championship. In the EPL, haven't seen it the last time they were up, and yet to score, I believe, so far yet as well. course, there's another player on Norwich who could be contributing to some goals this season. I'll talk about him a little bit later on in the show. But yeah, Norwich, they've got to find a way to play better defense if they want to stay up this time around. I definitely think they have the guys, and the tools, especially on the offensive end, to score some goals and stay up. But if the defense continues to leak goals against lesser opponents, much less these big six, and again, remember, goal difference is important, they're going to go right back down. Hopefully not. Don't like seeing clubs, only come up for one season, but as of right now, doesn't look good for Norwich. So those are my thoughts on the beginning of the new EPL season. So glad that the league is back and looking forward to watching here every weekend. Now let's transition over to some American soccer. And when I say that, I want to talk a little bit about the U.S. men's and women's national teams. I didn't really get to wrap things up there on my last episode because that was kind of before the Gold Cup final and also before the U.S. women's national team and the end to their Olympic run. Let's start off with the men's team. They got a goal in the 117th minute from Miles Robinson that was able to beat Mexico 1-0 and win their 7th Gold Cup title. Again, it was a thrilling performance, a really gritty performance, a throwback performance, honestly, from the U.S. men's national team. And you think about it, throughout that tournament, we had some great performances by the likes of Matthew Hoppe, by the likes of Jossie Zardes, Miles Robinson himself, Walker Zimmerman when he was healthy, a couple of those different holding midfielders, and of course, goalkeeper Matt Turner, that really turned some heads and could potentially cement their spot there on a potential World Cup qualifying roster. Again, a lot of guys to pick out. I know Greg Berhalter, he got a lot of flack throughout this tournament. At the end of the day, he got it done. This team got it done against a really good Mexico side. Remember, the U.S. really only brought maybe their C team to this tournament where Mexico were almost at full health. Again, of course, they had that early injury to Hervin Chucky Lozano, but other than that, the rest of their guys were there. And this U.S. team was able to find a way to win. Really encouraging going forward for the U.S. Of course, we're only a couple weeks away from World Cup qualifying. It's going to look a little bit different with no Christian Pulisic likely. But again, we've seen the start to the season for some of these other Americans. I know Gio Reyna scored in that first week. Of course, we got Weston McKennie. We've got some other guys to be looking at as well. We're going to join up with a few of these guys from the Gold Cup and hopefully take it to their first couple opponents in World Cup qualifying. But again, optimism is back for the U.S. men's national team. It's at an all-time high, at least, from the past couple of years. Hopefully they're able to kind of, reaffirm people's faith and get off to a good start in World Cup qualifying. But still, it was a thrilling match to go 2-0 over Mexico this year in major finals. It's just a dream come true. So again, hopefully they continue on forward with this and the success follows them into World Cup qualifying. On the flip side, the U.S. women's national team unfortunately did not have a happy end to their summer as they were unable to become the first international team to win the World Cup and the gold medal back-to-back as they lost in the semifinals to the rivals Canada by a score of 1-0 before eventually beating Australia by a score of 4-3 to win the bronze medal. Since then, we've seen the announcement that Carly Lloyd has officially retired from international play. And we also know as of right now that Megan Rapinoe is taking some time away to come up with her decision as to whether she will continue on international play. This is something that I don't think U.S. fans wanted to admit, but bringing back essentially the same roster from the World Cup for the Olympics probably wasn't the best move there by Vlatko Andonovski. They just didn't seem like themselves. And again, only they truly know how they were feeling, what was going on in those training sessions and out on the field. But again, they just didn't seem like themselves. The roster didn't seem to work. Think about it. Some of those players like a Tobin Heath, like a Julie Ertz, some of the other players were coming off of major injuries and just didn't have the time to get back to full fitness and to figure things out. They didn't look like they got things going on. U.S. just did not score at the rate that we are used to, and defensively also weren't up to snuff. In that semifinal match, again, we saw Alyssa Nair go down. That eventually, didn't really come into play, but still, in terms of an emotional standpoint, and just from how the game was going, it couldn't have been a good feeling to see your starting goalkeeper go down. Of course, they conceded that penalty late, and they weren't able to finish off their chances versus Canada, who had been playing really well and had played the U.S. close in previous matches. They were able to get it done there in the semifinals. So again, it's disappointing. Hopefully lessons are learned. Hats off to Carly Lloyd and potentially Megan Rapinoe on the careers that they were able to have. But yeah, I think this was the message sent that the U.S. women's national team needs to undergo a transitional period. We need to start bringing up new players, implementing them into this team, and hopefully we can get back to full strength and ready to go for that World Cup. So again, it's an unfortunate end. Hopefully, next time around they can win the World Cup and then they can go for that back-to-back gold medal once again. So disappointing, yes, but hopefully we'll learn from it Again, you got to bank on the talent and the pedigree of the U.S. Women's National Team for them to bounce back. Okay, now I want to get to some soccer in America at the domestic level, and I'll start off by saying this. I just haven't been able to watch all the soccer like I used to since moving here to Fayette. Been having to figure out, things with my job and moving in and stuff like that. So this is kind of going to be a chill overview of what's been going on in the likes of MLS, the NWSL, and the USL Championship, especially looking at the tables as they currently stand as we're just a few months away from the ends of the regular season. So let's start off with MLS. I'm going to start off in the Eastern Conference, where the New England Revolution have really put some distance between themselves and the rest of the teams, not just in that conference, but also been able to put themselves, a little bit of ways from the next team. They've currently opened up a 15-point lead there in the Eastern Conference over the second place Orlando City SC. They also have a 7-point lead over Seattle Sounders FC for that Supporter Shield. Again, behind New England and behind Orlando, you've got Philadelphia Union, who've really rebounded from a slow start to the regular season to move up to third place. Nashville SC are in fourth place. They've only lost twice this season, but I believe they have 11 draws, so they still haven't figured things out from that standpoint about, putting opponents to bed, but still very impressive that they've only lost twice. Behind Nashville, you got NYC FC, still one of the more higher scoring teams there in the Eastern Conference. Then it's CF Montreal, and then in that last playoff spot as of right now, you've got DC United. Right behind them, just on the outside looking in, you've got Atlanta United FC, who've rebounded a little bit since the sacking of their manager, Gabriel Hines. Right behind Atlanta, you have the reigning champions, Columbus Crew, there in ninth place. That is because they've lost 6 straight matches. My goodness, with the talent that they've got there, that is quite surprising to me. Just doesn't seem like, they've got the right pep in their step, the right mojo that they had last season to go with all the talent that they have. So could be some movement still with some of those clubs on the outside looking into those playoff spots. We'll have to see if the likes of, like a CF Montreal can maintain the form that they've had here in the middle of the season. You definitely got to like New England, coming out of this conference. They've just been completely dominant. Of course, Matt Turner back there in goal. You got Gustavo Bo, Carlos Heel, and of course, main man Bruce Arena running things there over at that club. So yeah, I definitely think it's going to be tough to oust them from the top of the Eastern Conference. Then you move over to the Western Conference, where Seattle Sounders FC currently hold a 3-point lead over Sporting KC. That's been a fun battle between the two top clubs there in the Western Conference. Seattle just had a great, comeback win there versus Columbus, where they were down by a goal. So again, they're still showing great form. They're going to get a few more players back in terms of health-wise. I mean, Raul Ruidiaz, of course, still killing it over there for Seattle. Those two clubs are followed by the Colorado Rapids. They're in third place. Then you've got the LA Galaxy in fourth. Minnesota United FC in fifth. They've really rebounded from that poor start to the season and are starting to look a little bit more like the Minnesota of last year. Then you've got Real Salt Lake. They're in sixth place, and they're in seventh. Holding on right now would be the San Jose Earthquakes. Right behind them, just out of playoff position, would be Portland Timbers and LAFC, two of the more higher profile teams there in the Western Conference. Seats got to be hot under Bob Bradley in terms of this team, in terms of them underperforming. If they don't make the playoffs, I definitely could see them making a change, or if they just make it in and they get ousted in the first round. But still, Western Conference is a really tough place to play. We've seen Colorado. They made that trade for Mark Anthony Kaye a few weeks ago, are maintaining that third spot behind the two top teams. Galaxy, they've fallen off a little bit, but still in the middle there. That would be a really cool first round matchup if it was them versus Minnesota. So again, we'll have to see going forward how these teams adjust here as we enter the final couple of months towards the season. In terms of the top teams, again, Seattle, Sporting KC, they've been battling out. It's been pretty even. Of course, Seattle had that great start to the season, the historic start to the season. I think it would be really cool. I mean, think about it. Basically be almost the farthest away between the two teams, right? New England and Seattle for the MLS Cup. But of course, you've got teams there in the West like Sporting KC and Colorado. Also over there in the East, Orlando. They've been playing pretty good defense at times this season. Nashville, again, they've only lost twice. So maybe they can find a way to eke out a result there in the playoffs. Still a wide open race, I think, for this year's MLS Cup. I know we're, of course, in the midst of the All-Star Weekend, or what they'll be doing here in midweek. But in terms of going forward, the big prize, that MLS Cup, there are a few clubs that have separated themselves as favorites, but I think we're in store for a very fun and entertaining tournament here to close out this season of MLS. All right, now let's take a look at the NWSL table. Let's start with Portland Thorns FC, who have regained the top spot in the league. I did see recently that 15-year-old Olivia Moultrie scored her first professional goal for the club. An outstanding moment for her. I believe it was off of a free kick and was really impressive. So that's a cool moment. And of course, Portland, with all the talent that they have, now that the women's national team players are back They are primed to stay at the top of the table, but they're going to get a challenge from the North Carolina Courage, who are only 2 points behind them in second place. And of course, all of the attacking talent that they have there with like Dabina, Jessica McDonald, and Lynn Williams. Behind those two teams, you have the Washington Spirit with what they've been able to do. And of course, rookie Trinity Rodman, what she's been able to accomplish here in her first season. And OL Reign. We talked a little bit about the struggles, how they just hadn't been able to click with all those imports from Lyon, but now they've started to figure things out and are pushing their way back up towards the top of the table. Then you've got New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC there in the middle of the table, followed by the Orlando Pride, Chicago Red Stars, the Houston Dash. Then following up in the rear, you got Racing Louisville FC in 9th. And then lastly, Kansas City in 10th, although they were able to pick up their first victory here of the season. It took them a while to do it, but they are on the board. So tough, kind of seasons right now. Chicago and Houston, they made a little bit of a push. They have since fallen back. Racing Louisville, in terms of the personnel that they have, it is their first season as a club. So it's not too surprising to see them here at this point. They've still been a fun team to watch in terms of, goal scoring and exciting matches. But yeah, in terms of the results, they're just not there right now. So going forward, I think Portland and North Carolina are on a separate tier for themselves. I think those two most likely will be battling out here in the playoffs. But you've got some interesting teams. The Reign, of course, have bounced back, could make some noise with all the talent that they have. And of course, then you got to think about the pedigree of the Red Stars, of the Houston Dash, what they have right now on their rosters, how, they just got to get into the playoffs, and they just got to win a couple games and they could get on a roll and really surprise some people. So again, keep up with the NWSL when you can. I know, again, those matches are on Paramount Plus. Hopefully we'll get a few playoffs games, on bigger channels. And of course, I know that final should be on CBS. Really looking forward to the end of the season. We'll see if Portland can hold on, or if North Carolina's the team, or if we're going to get another surprise here shortly. So again, national team players are back. NWSL is a full go. Excited to see where this season ends up. And lastly, I just want to really quickly talk about the USL Championship and its 4 divisions, where they stand at this point here with just a few months left in the regular season. We're going to start off out west with the Pacific Division. And of course, to nobody's surprise, Phoenix Rising FC have opened up a 9-point lead there at the top. They're ahead of Orange County SC in second place, and they are 2 points ahead of the likes of the Tacoma Defiance and San Diego Loyal. So again, no surprise, Phoenix, one of the best teams in the USL Championship, not just the history, of course, recently over the past few years, all the attacking talent that they have. It's no surprise that they've found a way to get to the top of this division and open up a sizable lead. We saw San Diego kind of get off to a slow start, but they're near the top there with Tacoma, who not a lot of people have talked about. Of course, Orange County, who've had a lot of success, against other opponents this year, just haven't been able to kind of close that gap on Phoenix. So again, no surprise, Phoenix once again at the top of whatever it is, the division, the conference, whatever they are playing. Now let's move over to the Mountain Division. And this was a division that Rio Grande Valley FC Toros had led for most of the beginning of it and through the summer. But now, of course, over the past couple of weeks, their results have seen them drop to 3rd place. That division is now being led by El Paso Locomotive FC, who've now opened up a 12-point lead at the top of that division, ahead of Rio Grande Valley, who are in 3rd, and ahead of Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC, who are in 2nd. A lot of good talent on those 2 other squads, but what El Paso have been able to do, from a defensive standpoint, from a goal-scoring standpoint, they've got things locked down. They've gotten on quite the roll. They've been picking up some clutch goals to get some really late results there in some of these matches lately, and they've just found a formula that works for them as of right now. A lot of fun teams in that division, a lot of good goal-scoring teams in that division, but what El Paso have been able to do from a complete team standpoint is what has gotten them to the top of the table, and it's why they have a sizable lead as of right now at this point in the season. Next up, moving over to the Central Division, one that holds a special place in my heart because of the teams and the familiarity there. Louisville City FC currently hold a 7-point lead with the top spot there in that division, ahead of Birmingham Legion, FC, who have been in that spot there for most of the season. But Louisville, of course, again, the pedigree, the experience, the players that they've brought in. One Kyle Gray, of course, has been helping that cause. They've gotten a lot of wins lately and been able to charge up to 1st place in the standings. Still like Birmingham to make some noise in that division. Of course, former St. Louis FC player Fanuel Cavita helping lead the line on defense back there. But I would say those are the 2 teams expected to do something. Atlanta, FC Tulsa, Indy 11 especially have fallen off just a little bit, and I don't think it's going to be, pretty competitive. I think it's going to be those 2 teams at the top of the Central Division who could be expected to make some noise here, down the stretch. And last but certainly not least, the Atlantic Division. You've got the Tampa Bay Rowdies and Pittsburgh Riverhounds SC tied on points at the top there in that division. That is because they are being led by 2 former STLFC players. You got Lewis Hilton on one side for Tampa Bay, who's really picked things up as of late. They had a little bit of a lull there, a few weeks ago during one of my other shows, but now since picked things back up, maybe we've gotten a few clutch results here over the past couple weeks. Pittsburgh, one of the hotter teams here, over the past month or two, and that's because Russell Cicerone is scoring goals left and right. Recently named USL Championship Player of the Week after scoring a hat trick in his last match. It's just been phenomenal goal scoring form for him. It has really helped lead Pittsburgh to get into this huge battle with Tampa at the top of the table. The Miami FC, they're just 3 points behind both of these clubs, so going to be a 3-horse race here till the end for that top spot in the Atlantic Division. But still, very happy to see a couple of former St. Louis FC players leading the way for their respective clubs. And yeah, I would say in terms of all 4 of those divisions, this one's probably got the most intrigue left here at the end of it. So those are my quick thoughts on the USL Championship and, of course, across the 3 major leagues here in American soccer. Looking forward to the finishes of those seasons. Hope we get some great playoff action here to end things. And again, just happy in terms of the success of the U.S. men's national team. Hopefully the U.S. women's national team can get back on the right track and keep going with what they had been doing before the Olympic setback. But still, good things happening right now in this country in terms of soccer. Now, of course, I want to go a little bit deeper and get to some St. Louis soccer news. Yes, I know plenty of stories that I could talk about here on this episode. I know SLU men's and women's soccer have gotten their seasons underway. We had some postseason recognition for the likes of Fire and Ice and the St. Louis Lions, their WPSL squads from this past summer. Plenty of other stuff going on as well, but there were 2 major stories from these past weeks that I got to address here on this episode. The first story is St. Louis City SC officially announced their inaugural under-16 and under-17 teams for this upcoming MLS NEXT season. Again, it was a very exciting announcement. So cool to see so many St. Louis area kids get to be a part of these 2, inaugural teams for MLS NEXT. As far as the schedule was released, it looks like the under-17s will begin on the road as they travel to take on Chicago Fire FC on August 28th, before eventually returning home on September 4th to play alongside the under-16s versus Shattuck St. Mary's, which I believe is a club from the Minnesota area. That will be at the Creve Coeur Soccer Complex on field number 1. So again, this is just a very exciting announcement to see the future of this club, to see potentially some guys who will make it all the way up to that senior team and could potentially be on it as early as 2023. Again, like I said, very exciting to see so many St. Louis area guys, to see some that we've already kind of spring to prominence. You think about someone like a Josh Mayer and see all the success that his brothers have had before him, and see him continue his path. Of course, the big acquisition, you could say, or at least the guy that's going to be on one of the teams, is Aaron Hurd, who was involved with Philadelphia Union, Academy after being brought in. He's highly touted and has left there and is now joined up here with St. Louis City SC. If you want to find more information about these guys, I know Flyer of Footy had a great article kind of detailing a little bit about some of these players and also did a podcast themselves. I'm sure some of the other shows have talked a little bit more in depth about the announcement, about some of these players. I would encourage you all to check that out if you haven't. But again, this is just a very exciting time. Again, they're going to be the first team to wear the crest, to be competitive for St. Louis City SC. I know fans are really looking forward to getting out and supporting these guys out there at Creve Coeur Soccer Complex. So again, very exciting times. Looking forward to their first match here coming up on August 28th and September 4th. And yeah, really cool to get things started here with the academy with these 2 teams. Very excited to see what they can do going forward. The other big St. Louis soccer news story has to be Josh Sargent officially completing his transfer from Werder Bremen all the way to Norwich City in the English Premier League. Sargent has made 2 substitute appearances so far for Norwich in league play, but he was able to make his first start in midweek in the club's Carabao Cup matchup versus Bournemouth. It was a 6-0 win by Norwich, and 2 of those goals were scored by Sargent. Scores a brace there in his first start. Great, again, beginning to his career for Norwich. I do want to caveat it a little bit with this, right? He's in a tough situation, possibly even a similar situation to what Bremen were in the Bundesliga. He's on a lower level team that doesn't play great defense, and they're going to need to score some goals in order to stay up. He's got a guy in front of him a little bit in Teemu Pukki. I know they kind of like to play maybe a 4-4-2 at times. Maybe he can kind of be that guy behind Pukki to provide a little bit more, speed, youthfulness at that position, of course, provide some goals. We'll just have to see. Hopefully he can carve out a role with this club, eventually get into that starting lineup on a consistent basis that would benefit him and, of course, benefit the U.S. men's national team. But again, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle in terms of Norwich tackling the EPL. I don't want to see him in a similar situation where he's on another team getting relegated from the top flight. So again, hoping Josh can find a way onto this club, onto this team, continue to do what he did in midweek. That is, of course, score goals His development is crucial for the U.S. men's national team going forward. And here's hoping again that he's able to carve out a spot on an English Premier League team. It's really cool to see a couple of our top American guys, Christian Pulisic and now Josh Sargent on EPL clubs. So again, hats off to him for making the move up. And here's hoping for more success here this season. So for my guest this week, I was able to catch up with a St. Louis soccer legend in his own right, someone who always provides great perspective on the beautiful game and who is all around just a great guy in general. Hope you enjoy. Well, for my guest this week, I am honored to be talking with, once again, a St. Louis soccer legend in his own right, former captain of St. Louis FC, and just an all-around great guy, the one and only Sam Fink. Sam, great to be catching up with you, man.
Yeah, good to see you. I've missed you.
I missed you too, man. Again, it's just kind of surreal to think how long ago it's been. We're a year removed, but still it just seems like yesterday. We're out at the park every week, with St. Louis FC. But I think, in terms of a starting point for this interview, I think there's really only one place to go. How you been, man? What's life been, how's life been treating you? What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I've been good, man. I've been real good. I've been very busy, which, is a good and a bad thing sometimes. But just spending a lot of time with my daughters, which is one of my favorite things to do. They are 2 and 3 now. Our youngest just turned 2. And they are absolutely insane age. They were, last year at the park, they were still in cute baby mode kind of. And they still are obviously cute, but they are wild. So that's a full-time job in itself. Other than that, I've been working, and I actually started working in insurance for a commercial insurance agency in Edwardsville. And I started that while I was still playing, just as something to get my feet wet in the real world and see what it's like when you're not just kicking a ball for a paycheck. I enjoyed it enough to keep doing it, and so that's what I've been doing for the year.
So we talked a little bit about this before we got into this in terms of the stage of your professional career, because again, it's never easy to leave the game, especially since you spent so much time with it. In terms of the status of your career, it's not official yet in terms of retirement, right? But in terms of opportunities, talk to me a little bit through, after the St. Louis FC, the end of that season up to this point, where your journey is kind of taking you on that front, on the soccer front.
Yeah, I obviously still have a desire to play. I don't think that'll ever fade, whether I'm 28 or 80. But at the conclusion of the season, it was crazy there for a couple of months. And my wife and I, we had, a lot of offers to go and play places. I'll say that. And really weighed them heavily. I obviously was leaning towards going and bringing the family with me. But we have such a great foundation here with both of our families being from St. Louis. And my wife started a business in early January, as well as sells real estate. And so we just had a lot of roots planted here, and that was a huge part of the equation and why ultimately felt like we couldn't uproot all of that. She was an absolute rock star in terms of giving me the freedom and saying, hey, we'll make it work if you want. And I took that deeply into consideration, prayed over it every night and every morning, really. But at the end of the day, it just felt like what was best for our family was for us not to move away at this time. And while that was a huge sacrifice, because soccer has been my love for as long as I can remember, that love doesn't even come close to the love I have for my wife and for my kids. And so at the end of the day, it just wasn't worth uprooting the family. Now, with that being said, those offers were more on the coasts. If something a little bit closer came, I would definitely consider it. I'm still fit and just staying active just in case. But that perfect offer probably isn't going to come. So writing's on the wall, as you said.
Well, I think it's extremely commendable, that decision, because like you said, the desire to play, keep playing is strong, no matter what, like you said, no matter what age. But like you've talked a little bit about here, in terms of just adjusting throughout the year, right? You've kind of made that transition a little bit into the next chapter of your life, post-soccer career. And I know not just in soccer, but in all of athletics, that's, something that most athletes fear. about that next step. What do I do? How can I transition quickly into that next part? You've been able to do that here with your job in insurance, and also now to an extent, you've got your family life and things like that. Talk to me a little bit about that transition. What, in terms of the easy parts, what made it easy? Maybe who was able to help out in those areas, especially work in your career. And of course, just some things maybe you've learned, because I know several athletes now across the country and across the world are going to be in a similar position at some point. I just wanted to hear your story on that front too.
Yeah, so I'll just say right off the bat, when we turned down the last two offers we were considering, I had probably a 2-week spell where I was just a mess and didn't really know which way was up, didn't really know how to think through things. And again, like I said, my wife was an absolute rock and everything I needed, as well as my family. My grandma actually went through COVID, who anybody watching this will know my grandma well, because she's the biggest soccer fan there is. And that kind of near-death experience, thankfully she's healthy again, but that kind of snapped me back into shape, and was like, look, man, you gotta realign your priorities here, because that's what's important at the end of the day. So first couple weeks were rough. I have started a sort of a sales competition. There's like 30 of us across the country that got accepted into this program. And there's just a ton of work involved in terms of cold calling, in terms of getting leads, in terms of just putting yourself out there and getting extremely uncomfortable, which anyone in sales would tell you that is uncomfortable. And so that's been a challenge. Honestly, it's been a challenge. To me, it felt like the first time I ever took a PK. Just the weight is on your shoulders. You feel that anxiety in your heart, and the only way to get it to stop is to step up and hit it. And so I've kind of tried to attack my work here the same way, and just get started, and the rest will take care of itself. So that's how I've attacked it. But it's been tough, like anything. But I will say that there are so many lessons learned through sport that have served me amazingly in this new role so far. One of them being just you do what has to be done, and that's the end of it. There is no like, let's do it tomorrow. Obviously, in sports, you have 90 minutes and you have to give your all, and you have your game plan. It's the same way in business for me. I have my game plan, and I have a certain amount of time in the day that I can attack it. And if I don't, then the game is lost. And so I think, as much as I can, I try to liken what I'm experiencing now with what I've experienced in sports, and try to glean those lessons from it. But it definitely takes, like, you learn so much in sports, but I would say if you asked the average athlete, they would say like, oh, no, there's nothing really important about me, or I'm not really different than anyone else. It takes like sitting down and actually thinking through, like, okay, what did I do? Like, when I was at PK, how did I respond? And little things like that, thinking through those moments. And when you can sit back and look at it, you realize, man, I have become a better person because of sports.
That's an extremely great perspective, man. I appreciate that. And just, again, I know that your lessons in terms of what other people are going through can really take something for that. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of the fun stuff, right? Because I know you're out of soccer, but you are a soccer fan, of course. And it's been a crazy, year in the sport. We're starting to see fans come back on a bigger scale. We just had a ton of fun stuff over the summer. You could get into whatever you want. We had the Euros, we had the U.S., men's and women's national teams in some big time tournaments. We've seen, again, the return to a normal schedule with some of the domestic leagues here in the U.S. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been watching, what you've been enjoying. And yeah, again, just some of your thoughts on what's been going down here over the past year in soccer.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy time. I loved Italy doing what they did. Their just passion for each other and their commitment to one another. And of course, like Chiellini and Bonucci being a center back, like I can just totally appreciate how they're still at the top of their game, even though they're, approaching the twilight years here. So I loved that. Seeing the national teams excel is, well, for the women, it is nothing new, but for the men, it is really exciting, especially seeing this younger generation come through and gain confidence and really just grab the bull by the horns and make it their own. So that's awesome. And then, man, if anyone that is a St. Louis FC fan will know this very well, but our guys are just crushing it. They're doing so well, and nothing brings me more joy in the soccer world than seeing teammates or friends that I've played with in the past excel this year in different teams, different conferences, everything. So it's been fun.
Well, let's expand a little bit upon that because, again, like you said, it's been truly amazing, But again, it's not a shock, I'm sure, not to you or to fans or anything like this about terms of the success of these guys. I mean, just as recently as this week, Russell Cicerone, named Player of the Week in USL Championship, having a goal-scoring season, one of the best of his career. Of course, your good buddy and personal friend, Kyle Gregg, took someone a while to figure out they probably should sign him, and Louisville figured that out, and he's been scoring goals ever since. Your former center back partner, Fanuel Kavita, captaining a really good Birmingham Legion side. Man, it's been great. Talk to me a little bit about, have you stayed in contact with some of these guys, in terms of what you want to share, your conversations with them, and just, in terms of appreciating what they've been able to do here this season?
Yeah, I'll say this. Anyone that needs a good story or lesson in perseverance and believing in yourself and having faith in the Lord that things will work out should talk to Kyle Gregg. Honestly, man, he's one of my best friends now, which I'm really proud to say. He's just an incredible person, and I don't think that light gets shined on athletes as much as it should. How difficult it is with being without a contract. So they're very rooted in St. Louis. They've got friends. They're planted in the church. They've obviously our kids grew up together, for instance, and so there's just so much that they had here, and then boom, they have to just uproot it all and leave. And then on top of that, their stuff is stored in a random place. They don't have a home. There's just so many things to it. But he stayed consistent, and his wife is amazing too, and told him that I believe in you and I know you can do this. And no surprise, he lands at one of, if not the best club in the whole league, and is doing well. And if you talk to him, he'll tell you that place is amazing. So I couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see. And again, like, we could go on and on. I mean, Joaquin is scoring goals at the Gold Cup, much less FC Tulsa. You have Kyle Morton making the jump up to MLS, but then coming back down to help out Memphis and just killing it then at that level, along with Kadeem. There's just so many really cool stories to see across. And all. I know you've had made deep connections with all of your teammates over the years, and it's just really cool to see them continue. Sam, I want to transition over to a little bit of a different topic. I don't know how much you've been following this, but since you are still, a St. Louis guy, in terms of what St. Louis City SC have been doing here recently, I know they've made a couple hires at the academy level with some coaches that maybe you've had some interactions before with in the past, Tim Kelly, Louise Swisher. But obviously, they're going to be at the forefront of the soccer scene in St. Louis here coming up. You've got the academy teams getting underway here in the next couple of weeks or so in terms of their MLS NEXT schedule. Have you been following anything about what the club's been doing? Does anything kind of catch your eye a little bit? What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I just was talking with Johnny Garcia, who's a longtime St. Louis FC fan, and we were talking about the excitement and some of the stuff with the stadium being built. And I had not seen the stadium, and so I actually went up in the Ferris wheel with my daughters, and just to see that, that stadium and then Enterprise and then Busch is just is so cool. I think that some of the guys in terms of coaching that they've brought on are top coaches. I've got to spend a lot of time with them through my time at Gallagher, but then also my time at St. Louis FC. And it's no surprise that those guys are making that jump. And I think that for City to go and pluck some of those guys out of what they're doing and bring them into their culture and what they're building, it's a very smart move. And I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Yeah, again, I know that just back home right now, in terms of the development, the stadium has gone up super quick. And then, of course, now with these academy teams, fans can kind of go out now and support the club. It's very exciting times. And of course, 2023 will get here before we know it. So again, I think as well, I would have to agree in terms of the developments and how they've done it. They've been doing a good job here so far. Sam, again, I just want to wrap up. And again, appreciate you coming on to the show this week and catching up and stuff. So I know there are plenty of people, plenty of St. Louis FC fans, plenty of fans from all the teams, that you've been on that love to hear from you. Good to hear that you're doing well. In terms of just a message for them anything you want to sign off with? And also, again, either with your work or anything else in life, what you're doing right now in terms of any causes that you kind of have championed here so far. What do you want to promote here at the end?
Yeah, in terms of work, obviously, if you're a business owner, let me know and we can chat insurance. In terms of other things that are going on, I plan to start putting together some soccer clinics throughout the area, and those will probably be free. Just want to give back to the community and the sport that I love. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you're a fan of soccer and you've watched me play or cheered on the team, thank you. It's looking more and more like I'm becoming one of you now. So I'm becoming just another fan of the game. So I look forward to continuing to connect with all the people over the years that have been so good to me, and maybe learning from them now.
Well, I'll tell you, if you're putting together some clinics, that's an excellent opportunity to learn from one of the best. And again, I also think, I don't know if anyone's told you this yet, but a center back in insurance just makes perfect sense because you've been covering people all of your life. So
I might have to call you about some branding.
There you go. You can take that one for free. That's for sure. Sam, it's a pleasure, man. I'm glad you're doing well. Glad the family's doing well. Continue to stay at it at work. And again, if a chance ever comes back up, I know there'll be plenty of fans out there who will make the trip no matter what, even if it was on the coast, to go and see you play, man. So great to hear from you, and thanks for joining me on the show this week.
Thanks for bringing me back to a good time. Good to see you, man.
My thanks to Sam for joining me on the show. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get back to this show. It was really good to come back here with the week that I was able to do so in terms of how my schedule played out. Of course, things are going to pick up here soon with my broadcast. If you're interested in checking out my play-by-play skills here in the future, I'll be tweeting out links, to the games on game day. I'm sure you'll be able to figure that out. You can follow me at JCM Brave 10 as of right now. I'm actually going to switch that to JCM Peacock 10 because, of course, I am an Upper Iowa Peacock here shortly, but at least as of right now through the weekend, that's where you can find me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, the GTSS, it's not officially dead. It's just, again, kind of taking some time off as I continue to work through my job. But hopefully, sometime in the future, I'll be able to post another episode, hopefully again, with a great guest, a little bit on down the line, especially maybe closer to the holidays as I'll have some time off to kind of focus on things like that. But still, hopefully everyone's doing good back home in STL. Again, I'm trying to listen to as many of the shows as I can in my spare time. Keep up the great work. The city, loves to have this coverage. Again, so many great things happening with soccer in St. Louis and, of course, around the world as well. So keep it up. Folks like me outside St. Louis desperately need the coverage. So, again, keep up the great work. Looking forward to seeing what people can do. Again, looking forward to what St. Louis City SC can do with their academy teams. We're in full swing now. Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, whatever floats your boat. It's going on right now. We got a full slate of soccer to enjoy here as we head into the fall. So, again, it was great to get back to the show this week. It was great to reconnect with Sam. And hopefully, again, in the future, I'll be able to come back with a brand new episode. So, again, hope everyone's doing well. Have a great weekend. Hope to be speaking with you again soon.